this one, crash warning as $150,000 wiped off home values. This is on the third. Or 1 in 3, alarming sign, Aussies are ditching property dream. I mean, let's get a sense of balance here, Edwin. What do you think of crashes?
Look, I think a crash, as you said, you rightly say, it's first of all, it's got to be also defined with time as well as with a percentage drop, and it's similar to what we basically saw or started to really see in New Zealand. We'll talk a little bit more later on in the rant as to what promoted or what has kept a lid on the price from jumping back up again. Now, so I would say the crash, you start really feeling it in your mid-20s, because I think people are going to start panicking. What we're seeing, as I said, since we've started looking at this sort of what's happening post-budget and the political spectrum, what we've got is, in my opinion, is a lot of noise and a lot of emotion, and you could say it's because of that you've got somewhat of a correction. Because a lot of it's led by emotion and led by noise. Because when you look at the fundamentals of what keeps property prices rise, in essence, okay, it's your interest rates, your demand and supply, right? They're your biggest main factors to keep the prices bubbling. We're not getting rid of two of those. We're not eliminating two. You could say that rates are higher and there's a lot of stress, but stress doesn't necessarily convert into mortgagee sales. It just means that a lot of families do without a lot of things that they would otherwise have, like private schooling, 2 cars in the garage, and the list goes on. And we've talked about these corrections in the past. I really believe that in 2019 we were about to go off the cliff then, and I'd say again, it was many businesses were going to go off the cliff that fall. Because of my involvement in the industry, I could see the pain that a lot of other people don't see. In 2019, for me, I could really see a drop of anywhere between 20 to 30% drops, and the mortgagee sales were the voluntary mortgagee sales, you could say, or the what would you call it, self-listing type of pressure sales, were going to come on in droves. But for the lockdowns, it really saved the whole economy, the whole economic outlay of Australia. It really, the landscape, because of the amount of money that the government threw during that period. Now, as you rightly said, from 2021 till now, look, mate, I can tell you that I can name quite a number of suburbs that we've experienced, and my family have experienced 110, 120% capital growth in their investment portfolios by buying 1 or 2 properties in certain areas, certain parts of Sydney, outside of other areas. I'm just talking Sydney region, right? Now, from last year when the 5% the support guarantee, whatever you want to call it, the government subsidised the other, or are on the hook for the other 15%, the 5% scheme, deposit scheme. That again, we saw and we documented and we shared how we on the ground, live at grassroots levels, we saw properties go up from 950,000 and like properties to be selling 3 months later for 1.3, and now the entry level is 1.3 to 1.35 in certain LGAs of Sydney or certain suburbs of Sydney. And to go back, even from that position, to go back 10%, again, it's really a correction. But when you start using the percentages across the broad spectrum and across all properties as a broad, then you've got a mixture of some areas that have got, in some types of properties that have gone back potentially 30, 40%. You've got others that have gone back 2, 3% perhaps, others that are stagnant, and others that are still going up in value. But when you're painting it with a broad brush, the whole property landscape and the property arena, as the mainstream do, I say this is why I go back to my position of, if we really genuinely have that 10%, because 10% to me is really closer to your 20, 25 in most markets, that just average it out. But when you bring it back to having a 20+% drop, and then you start getting a lot more panic and a lot more stress and a lot more properties on the market, that's when you start really feeling. And then that's why I say that then the economy is in a lot of shit, because of the other factors that are involved that are tied up with the property landscape, the property arena, which is your international education, construction, and all the people that are borrowed on the equity of the properties in order to set up businesses. So there's your problem. So yeah, if we really get into that arena of a crash, we're talking mid-20s to 30. I mean, we're in a lot of trouble. We will be in a lot of trouble, but I don't believe we're going to get past or even as close. If you're relying in general terms with your prop track info, your core logic info, whatever info in terms of the mainstream as to what they're annualizing or giving you the quarter feedbacks. For me, anything between that 5 and 10 is really a market correction based on what the sentiment is at the time. But I'm still of the opinion that this correction and this hiccup is will settle. Will be played down sooner than later, and it may take 3 to 6 months. Could be closer to the 6 months, but unless we really ramp up the construction side of things, the supply side of things, we're not catching up with the demand. If anything, we've made supply a lot harder to reach the targets that the government or anybody would have, or those that are in need of a dwelling would want to see.
Yeah, I think the supply side is definitely the issue. Of course, migration is still relatively high, so there's still some demand there. And of course, if people actually stop buying for a period of time, that creates a pent-up demand for later. So all of those factors are in the mix. But it is interesting, this Resolve poll is quite fascinating. Support for lower house prices. This is a survey that they did. How many housing people thinking about housing would support lower house prices? How many are undecided? And how many oppose? And it's really interesting that there's quite a small proportion. It varies by income, it varies by property ownership and age. But there's a relatively small proportion who are people total support, right, for that end of the spectrum, right? Total support, pretty strong. Total oppose, pretty weak. And I think that's quite an interesting observation. There are a lot of people out there, Edwin, who are actually believing that really things have got out of hand. Prices are way too high relative to income, and I quite often get in my surveys, well, my kids will never get a property because it's just too expensive to get in. And so there is, I think, an acceptance that we need a little bit of a correction. We need a little bit of adjustment to prices over time. And then it begs the question, well, how much of a correction do you want? Over what period of time? And are you prepared to see your property go down in value, or is it somebody else's problem, right? I think that's the way it gets really interesting, because I have to tell you that in my surveys, when you ask people about their particular property, the proportion who actually are willing and able to accept a fall in their value is a hell of a lot smaller than this Resolve survey would suggest.
Yeah, look, we all have our wish list, right? I mean, many of my colleagues would wish that Bitcoin went to 500,000, and many other things. And you could also say, Martin, that I support people that are on full plant-based diets. I support them, but it doesn't mean that I'd like to eat tofu. It doesn't mean that I'll eat the tofu, or that I'd prefer tofu over a Wagyu steak, does it? So we can say one thing, but when it comes to the crunch, as you said, if you ask the question, right? Okay, how much are you prepared to lose in terms of value of your property to allow your child to enter the market? That's a different. That would be a different kettle of fish. Particularly if that was going to be a determining factor. Whilst we've got pie in the sky, whilst we've got ideologies, it's just pie in the sky. No, I don't believe that people in general want to lose. I could be wrong. Our viewers could correct me, but I don't believe that people want to lose in order to let others get into the arena. Or perhaps what they're really wanting is a slowdown in value. But we go back to supply and demand. Yep. We go back to the principles of how do you curve demand, and how do you how can we increase supply? But if we're not going to be touching on those points, that is why I gave to my simple premise that nobody's going to crash the property market presently. The one that's going to potentially crash the property market is the redhead, because that is where you're basically coming in with a sledgehammer. Presently, that is under our understanding of what's the. So this is why I go back in the serious now and say, do people really understand what they're asking for? Listen, I'm all for it, and I'll be upfront. I reading more and more as to what they want to put forth, what one nation wants to put forward, and what they're starting to articulate. It makes a lot of sense. But when it comes down to will you, when the real is going to be, and people are going to wake up to the fact that if we go down this road, look at the kerfuffle that's been created at the moment. Look at the emotion at the moment and they haven't allowed the penny to drop yet, or they haven't allowed the dust to settle. And look at the emotion and look what's happened to the property arena and the property markets. And it's not that people have stopped buying. Right, and we see it on the open for inspections. We see what properties attract a lot of viewers, what properties don't. I mean, look, I was at an open for inspection, and I'd stayed there the full hour at the open for inspection in the Blacktown LGA, and they had 14 groups through the property. And out of those 14 groups, you can't tell me that they were your neighbours listening to the conversations and also talking further with the agent. Yeah, there were 8 of those were serious. We're in the market to buy. It's just at what point do they enter the market is the question. So, but a lot of things come to play. So this is when you everybody, as I said, everybody wishes for world peace. Everybody wishes for crypto to be up to 500,000. And for your mother-in-law to relocate to the Antarctic or something. But But that's wishful thinking, right?
Well, that's right. And I always say, do turkeys vote for Christmas, right? And it's a bit like that. You know, I actually think that people have this sort of disconnect between that philosophical point about, yes, we need affordability to be adjusted. But when it comes to your property and your situation, maybe there's a different take.